we've had our first glimpse of Superman in the new James Gunn version of the DCEU. And, well, the reaction to it has been kind of interesting. We've got him. I actually used a variation of this as the thumbnail for this video, but people don't
It's
seem
not
to...
laser, man.
Doesn't it remind you?
Bugging me. What is it?
Yeah, I don't know. It reminds me a little. It's weird. It reminds me a little bit of one of the outfits in the video game Injustice: Gods Among Us.
It looks like a really crappy cosplay. Like the suit looks wrinkled, and it looks like a fake muscle suit. Like the guy who's in it isn't really that big, and so this is like to try and bulk him out. It's the sort of thing you would see at a convention or something.
Right, but is he trying to tell us that he doesn't care what's going on in the background?
Well, that was my read.
Like,
a giant, massive electric pink sperm cell can't be very important to him because he's just very casually lacing his boots up.
I know.
Yeah.
And
I've seen people speculate over the emotional state is like that of he's at a second act low point, and I'm just sitting like, why release an image that requires that kind of context to enjoy as a moment?
Especially,
why can't he be standing on the top of a skyscraper looking heroic or something, with the stars and stripes in the background? Like, what you associate with Superman.
But is it me or does he look a little bit like Cavill in that shot, like in the face? Because I'm like, why hire someone that has that kind of like essence of Cavill when keep Cavill?
I mean, ultimately, everyone who plays Superman is going to look somewhat similar because it's the nature of the character, I suppose.
Right. But doesn't he look a lot like Cavill in the shot? Like the face? Or is it just me?
A little bit, yeah. There's a resemblance there.
I just want to chime in, and now I'm going to be called a corporate shill, I know. But this, as James Gunn pointed out, this was an a random on-set photograph of the actor between takes, and it's not a promotional photograph. It was just capturing what he looked like at the moment, literally, putting on his boots.
With a giant space laser behind him.
Well, yeah, that's all like that was in the background on set for whatever reason. But I think that one of the fun things about this is I think he was trying to take a real world shot that is not supposed to be necessarily indicative of what you're going to see in the movie, but it's almost there's something going on, I think, in this picture that the still photographer captured that James Gunn liked. So having been a veteran of being on a Superman set for a year, the entire time it was being shot, when Brandon Routh was first photographed and they made the first picture that they released, it was an actual photography session where he was taken out by the still photographer and it was lit and they did just a photo shoot to have an officially released photograph. I think the reason James Gunn released this is because it was a candid moment that Cornsweat didn't even know he was being photographed by the still photographer, and that there was something in here about Superman that James Gunn saw. I don't want to speak for him, but it's just what he said when he released this on Threads, this picture. So he said, my still photographer actually captured this during the middle of production one day, and I didn't even know that they did it. And I saw this, and I thought,
surely
I really like
this. He recognized, though, that like this would get shared around, and people would be like, "This is the first look at Superman in the new DC universe."
Yeah, I know. I thought I can't speak to.
His boot with a giant laser in the background.
Yeah, but
not only should he be aware that that's how it would be seen, but he should also be aware it should then in turn be seen as though most people will not know the context of that release and assume James is showing us this to give us an implication of the character.
Yeah.
That's what most people will assume.
Well, and I think there's two things to draw from this. One, the reaction has been so negative, and I wonder if that's indicative of a general dislike towards this movie. The general mood amongst the fan base is like, oh, we don't want another fucking Superman movie with another, like, a different Superman. And so we're just looking for reasons to get pissed off and mock this one. And two...
Could be. People are tired of the reboots.
I think so.
There is a bitterness that exists. There's not undeniable toward DC right now and their failures. Their many, many, many failures. and we're not hoping to see another one. So yeah, this film's got a lot of fucking work to do if it wants to win.
It has
back
to be
the
great,
Oscar.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, like, you know, James Gunn's general perception, I guess, like his public image is a guy who is, you know, willing to be a bit subversive and have a bit of fun with his concepts and doesn't really take his superhero stuff too seriously. Like, I know the third Guardians movie had some pretty heavy moments in it, but his general tone is to like have quite a lot of fun with it and just mock it and not really get too earnest with it. Whereas that's the antithesis of what Superman is. It should be super earnest. It should be taking itself seriously as a superhero movie. And I wonder if that's just a really bad call for a guy who's already got that kind of reputation as a filmmaker to show something like this, a Superman who's like essentially being nonchalant about the fucking end of the world in the background.
I think there might be a little of that in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, come on, Kryptonian sperm laser. I don't know what it is. It's just
again, he had to understand that everybody was going to look at this image, and as your first impression with no other information, you know, people are going to wonder and they're going to read into it and they're going to speculate, and it's as they would, you know, like is there something to be said about what kind of Superman he's going to be because of the way that he's sitting and seemingly casual about a giant laser firing off in the background? You know,
that was my read about it. Without knowing the background for it, that was my assumption. It's like, surely you would want as your first publicly released image from like the set of your brand new Superman film, on which basically the entire fate of your project depends. You want it to be as unambiguous as possible in terms of like, this is the type of character you're going to get. And Gunn, I'm sure, is aware, because, you know, he engages enough with fans on social media and things to know that people are very, very tired of, you know, tearing down superheroes, especially like the stronger male superheroes. Tired of the darker and the grittier stuff. Superman in particular, you know, usually used to at least stand for, you know, upright, strong, value oriented, you know, an actual icon of someone that you would, you know, the most morally perfect person you would aspire to be. And releasing a photo like this, which is so ambiguous, just allows people to fulfill all of their worst possible ideas as to what this characterization of Superman is going to be like. On the plus side, I mean, that obviously is not the intent, so maybe the film will still be good. It's just that it's bad PR to not understand that, I think.
Yeah, shouldn't he have planted his flag with like a Superman that's bright, hopeful, you know, clean costumes, standing up in the world and like, I'm here, truth, justice, American way.
You think so? Especially since I think that's what he wants to do, right? Is like
that's what I thought he wanted to. Man? Yeah, wasn't that what he wants to do, Fringy? Is like, isn't that what Legacy is supposed to be about?
I thought so.
I thought so.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. I mean, I really thought he was going to go back a little bit more of that Christopher Reeve, you know, bright colors. Again, truth, justice, the American way. Let's go.
Yeah, and this image just doesn't doesn't give you that sense, which again, for your first look at, and not, it's like you said, it's not only for Superman, it's for this new DC universe. It all relies on this. Like, I think this film has to be, it can't just be good. It has to be great in order to overcome essentially all of the baggage that it's going to be weighed down with for the last, you know, decade of DC films. There's a lot riding on it.
Well, it has to contrast, especially with Snyder. If we're going back to dark, then what was the point?
Yeah, exactly. You gotta try and like present it as much of a new direction that you're taking these films in as much as possible. Because, I mean, I imagine that, you know, even though it's like a 2-year gap between the end of the DCEU and this one, it's not long. And it's not even 2 years, really. It's a year and a half. It's not long. And people are probably still going to be thinking, like, remember The Flash? Remember that terrible movie?
Well, that's the problem. Like, when you say, like, oh, remember The Flash? Remember Black Adam? Like, remember Blue Beetle? No one does.
That's true. That is true.
But, no, I get the other point that you're making, though, about, like, with Superman, this is the time when this is the time when people are just sick of subversion of the genre. I think they're sick of like, oh, this is a quirky new take on the character, and like, you know, he's different because he doesn't want to be a hero and he's sarcastic or whatever, lazy. That we have now progressed and come full circle to the point where, no, if you're going to make this work in any capacity, you're probably just going to have to tell a straight up heroic story of Superman actually being a hero and being a good guy character.
I
That's the
think you
only
can
way
do
you're
that
going to make this
quite
work.
overtly as well, right? Because I always go back when talking like this conversation. Always reminds me of it's seen in Avengers, the first one, where Coulson's showing Cap his suit, and he says, "Isn't this a bit old fashioned?" And Coulson says, "I think with what it's about to come to light, I think people need a little bit of the old fashioned right about now." And they did that film didn't shy away from the idea that Captain America represents old fashioned values which are good. It was quite honest about that, and consequently, that character is quite well loved. And the modern iteration is not, obviously, for very different reasons. But like, you don't have to be very coy about what you're doing with Superman, and I think it would go a long way to encourage fans who might be skeptical about this new film to say, no, this is what Superman will stand for, and then to show him standing for that in your first publicity photo, rather than sitting there pulling his boots on like he doesn't give a shit.